accuse me of something, so why don't you let me actually answer? You're not going to vote for a Republican ever.
No, I'm gonna finish what I'm gonna say.
The family business, I had been told that they were printers and journalists, but they were in fact enslavers.
Sunny Hostin, her husband accused of committing federal insurance fraud in a lawsuit.
Every legal expert I've talked to has said most likely a fine and probation if he's even
I'll tell
convicted.
you why you're wrong as this legal expert. So why do you think that uneducated white women voted against their reproductive health freedoms? The majority of the party, which has been cowardly and feckless and complicit and enabling in allowing Trump's racism, bullying, his demagoguery, misogyny, why are we as Democrats calling for our nominee to change?
Sunny Hostin is one of the most hated and controversial people in the political sphere today. Furthermore, The View, the show she's regularly seen on and the co-host of, surprisingly might have a worse reputation. But why is this? How did Sunny Hostin become the laughingstock of the political world, where thousands of people scream for her and The View to be cancelled? Is it deserved, or does she just get a bad rep for no reason? Well, let's start from the beginning. To understand someone's behaviors, we must understand their past. On October 28, 1968, Sunny Hostin was born into a financially unstable home in the South Bronx, New York. Upon birth, Sunny was given the name Asuncion Cumming. Sunny would simply become her nickname due to pronunciation issues, something we'll touch on more later. Most of her childhood was spent growing up in the Bronx housing projects.
That's in front of, I believe, Morris Avenue, a tenement that we lived in until we could move up to the projects that had no heat, hot water, and we were on the 5th floor.
But they were tough times, but they were tough
roaches.
times. Wow.
When she was 8 years old, she would move to Stuyvesant Town, or Peter Cooper Village, which was a housing complex located in New York. The reason for the move was, in quotes, "My parents then felt that I'd have a better life in Manhattan." Sunny grew up with her mother, Rosa Beza, and her father, William Cumming.
My mom is actually considered a white Hispanic because her father is a Sephardic Jew, which is a Spanish Jew. But she is considered white and my father is considered black. And so I've always been considered by society as a biracial person because my parents got married in 1968 and the loving decision came down in 1967. So they weren't able to really formally get married before they did.
Her father didn't have a college degree, but had a technical degree where, now retired, would go into IT. Her mother is a director of a New York City nursery school. Her parents would end up getting divorced. When exactly this was, is hard to say. Sunny Hostin works hard to claim her childhood was riddled with poverty and racism, and while few would doubt that she faced difficult circumstances, there are some inconsistencies with her stories. The Stuyvesant projects were, and remain, an upper middle class community on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, not far from Soho, the financial district, and other bustling communities. Plus, she attended a private, all-girl Catholic high school. Poverty rates in Stuyvesant were far lower than almost all areas in Manhattan. Inconsistencies like this make some wonder why. And why did her own mother refuse to talk to her for a week after she read Sunny's memoir? This is all anecdotal. We are not saying Sunny is lying about her poverty-stricken childhood, but through research on this video, we have found some inconsistencies in her story that could possibly raise alarms of over-exaggeration. Or it could possibly be human error when telling her story. Whether this is true or not, we'll leave up to you to decide. But despite a tough childhood, Sunny would show great academic potential, as well as an early love for journalism.
I didn't realize you were such a child prodigy. I did not realize this. Sunny started high school at 12.
So like academically I could keep up, but socially I just wasn't where everyone else was. And I think that's why in many respects I'm kind of childlike now. I get a lot of things from viewers that are like, for a 53-year-old, you're so naive. Well, I was kind of stunted early on.
Sunny Hostin would skip 2 grades and enter high school at the age of 12. After high school, despite still wanting a career in journalism and television, her mother would push her into a more stable, predictable, and respected career.
When I was talking about broadcast journalism to my mom, first she didn't really understand what that meant. She thought, I wanted to be an actress. It was really about, no one looks like you. It's going to be really hard. You're not going to be able to get a shot. We've poured everything we have into you so that you could be successful, and you're going to throw it all away on this dream that is probably not going to happen. Do something steady, Asuncion. Do law, do medicine. She was pushing me. I'm not even good at math and science. And she was like, do that.
Sunny would oblige and enter college at the age of 16. She'd receive a bachelor's degree in English and Rhetoric from Binghamton University, and then would move on to a Juris Doctor degree from Notre Dame's Law School, following her mother's guidance. After law school, she would begin her career as a law clerk to Chief Judge of the Maryland Court of Appeals, Robert M. Bell.
I really wanted to clerk for an appellate court, and I applied kind of late, and I was calling around, and someone said, I got a judge who's very difficult. So I interview, and I get into a huge argument with you. I don't know if you remember, about and I went crazy, and he was needling me now that I know who he is. And I was like, you're wrong, and this is ridiculous. And I kind of stormed out of the interview, and I was like, well, I didn't want that job anyway. And your law secretary called me and told me that you got the job.
She also worked as a trial attorney in the Antitrust Division for the U.S. Department of Justice. And then after that, a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., specializing in child and women crime, where she would then be awarded for her achievements in that particular area. Finally, ironically enough, she worked at Kroll Incorporated, where she was managing director of business intelligence and investigations, where she would help investigators find and uncover fraud, which fraud will be a common thing coming up later in this video. Now, we're all here because of the Sunny we know on The View, so I'll keep Sunny getting into television very brief. She first started as a court TV network commentator on The O'Reilly Factor, which took place on Fox News. Ironic. Then, in 2007, would become a CNN host and legal analyst.
A lot of people don't know and didn't know until I wrote the book that I got fired from CNN.
Yeah.
My contract was not renewed.
And had to go back into the same building to work at
HLN and Court TV. In a much less prestigious position, with people kind of looking down on me.
In 2014, she starred for the first time on The View.
Well, now, The View says goodbye to a longtime member of their show.
And inside sources tell us ABC wasted no time testing her possible replacement.
You don't need me to reintroduce her. Sunny Hostin, you know who she is.
Sunny Hostin from CNN is said to be the frontrunner. Reportedly, she has already negotiated with CNN to be able to do both The View and CNN.
I got offered a position at The View, and it got snatched back because I was not Latina enough.
But would not become a permanent guest. That was until 2016, where she would be invited to become a permanent co-host on the show, which leads to the whole point of this video. Despite showing great potential, why does everybody seem to hate Sunny Hostin? Well, the answers to that aren't too hard to find. There are 3 reasons Sunny Hostin is hated so much. One of the most consistent criticisms Sunny faces is that she simply interrupts guests and even co-hosts, especially if they have an opinion she doesn't agree with.
Yeah. When they said we're worrying about, can I just finish? Let me just finish.
Showing the exact definition of immaturity. It's not hard to realize that when she skipped a couple grades of school, she never had the foundation to mature properly. Sunny herself has even admitted this. In fact, maybe because of her young age, she got away with more whining when it should have been driven out of her.
When I hear people saying, oh, my best friend from high school, or, I don't have that. I'm older than a lot of my friends because my friends were younger, actually. But no, it's socially, you're a hot mess.
A great example of this immaturity was during an interview she did with Billy D. Williams.
So you did start, as Whoopi said, in the industry at a time when few people of color were on TV and in movies, and early...
Everybody's people of color.
Yes. Well, a black man.
Well, a brown-skinned man?
Brown-skinned man. And early on, you struggled to find work, being offered either stereotypical roles or nothing at all. And you write about it sending you into a depression. Did you ever think about quitting?
He was shocked by her constant pushing of a racism narrative into every question she had. He calmly pushed back that all people are people of color, but she couldn't let it go. To Mr. Williams' credit, he doesn't take the bait. He showed viewers that skin color didn't determine his success. His pride and perseverance did.
What kept you going?
Well, I don't know. You know, you just live from moment to moment and do what you have to do and expect things to not always go your way.
But for Sunny Hostin, if she can't get a successful black actor and role model to go along, she'll keep pushing it, just to keep the racism narrative alive. It was Booker T. Washington, a black man, who once said, in quotes, "I'm afraid that there is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well, because as long as the disease holds out, they have not only an easy means of making a living, but also an easy medium through which to make themselves prominent before the public." Sunny is precisely the person he was talking about. Another stunning example of her immature behavior was when renowned ESPN sports commentator Stephen A. Smith appeared on The View and brought common sense and logic to the panel.
Do you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, when we got in the whole transgender issue and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that. These are
less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
but you know what?
When he was talking about what the average person is dealing with and how they don't have all the information that the fringe left, as he called them, did, she condescendingly said, in quotes, "Maybe you need to listen to the news when you're in traffic."
But I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah,
you're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you. Yeah. But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
But that means they don't have the information.
Okay, but 90% of the voters don't have the information. If you're out there busting your tail to make ends meet and to pay your bills, and you're going to work every day, and you got a family to take care of, you understand, you got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. You don't have time to know what you and I know.
Maybe you need to listen to the news when you're in traffic.
Well, again,
maybe
I agree with
not
that.
be uninformed.
This was clearly viral and disrespectful. She won't listen to anyone if they don't agree with her. She can't stand anyone with a different opinion. Sunny even talked down to Republican Representative Tim Scott when he was running for president during the primaries.
The ladies at that hard-hitting news show on ABC called The View couldn't help from, well, weighing in, this time worrying over his love life. You just can't make this up.
The only thing that I worry about is like a Ginny Thomas popping up. Right? So you have someone that is single and someone becomes president, and then he meets a Ginny Thomas. And so if someone is not married and then they get married to Ginny Thomas, I'm concerned.
Sunny said that if Tim became president, being single, he could marry a, in quotes, Ginny Thomas. To make this point more clear, Ginny Thomas is married to Clarence Thomas, a black man who was the second black Supreme Court justice in history, who also happens to be a Republican. Ginny Thomas is, of course, white.
Oh, he might marry a Ginny Thomas. Is that not playing the race card?
Absolutely, Sean. The Democrat Party and the progressive left, they are stuck in Jim Crow 1920s and 30s. What they do not want is a black man who thinks for himself. You can be anything in America if you're black, except for a conservative. That's why Sunny is so radical and so disgusting with her comments. They do not want my life story to be told because it disrupts the lies of the radical left. I can't think of anything more disgusting and more disheartening to watch the Democratic Party descend down into the 1920s.
You know,
unbelievable. but consistent.
Even though she pegs everyone else as one, Sunny Hostin usually seems to be the actual racist. She's immature, and everything Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought against is what she clings to.
One of the things I think about, and one of the reasons why I'm on the show, is because of the comments that were made, frankly, on this show, that the only way for a young African-American kid to be successful in this country is to be the exception and not the rule. That is a dangerous, offensive, disgusting message to send to our young people today, that the only way to succeed is by being the exception. I will tell you that if my life is the exception, I can't imagine.
But it is.
But it's not, actually. It's
been 114 years.
Yeah, so the fact of the matter is we've had an African-American president, African-American vice president. We've had 2 African-Americans to be secretaries of the state. In my home city, the police chief is an African-American who's now running for mayor. The head of the highway patrol for South Carolina is an African-American.
Still exceptions.
In 1975, there was about 15% employment in the African-American community. For the first time in the history of the country, it's under 5%.
While many big names in politics can arguably be seen as immature, fans have latched onto something far worse that Sunny Hostin does. Constantly. The second reason people are fed up with Sunny Hostin is due to her raging hypocrisy. One of the biggest examples being, throughout her whole career, she has been an outspoken supporter of black men and women getting reparations, or bulk payments from the government because of slavery. She doesn't care that no American alive today ever owned a slave, or to go even further, not a single American had a grandparent who did. Despite this, all white people are still guilty in her eyes. However, just 11 months ago, she decided to go on a PBS series called Finding Your Roots, where they take a deep dive into your family's history. This is when she came across a shocking revelation.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah.
I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
She was told that her ancestors took part in slavery and actually owned slaves themselves. She wasted no time to go on The View and to start making excuses.
There were slaves on both sides of her family, mothers and fathers. At first, I was deeply disappointed.
The slave thing is a bummer.
It's a bummer.
I can control it.
I still believe, I still believe in reparations, by the way, so y'all can stop texting me and emailing me and saying that I'm a white girl and that I don't deserve reparations. I still believe that.
Someone did that to you?
Yeah.
I don't know who sent her a thing telling her she was a white girl.
Okay, it's too much, people.
She gave herself a free pass because, well, she's black, but everyone else is still guilty.
And I'm enriched by knowing that my family has come so far from being enslavers to my mother marrying my father in 1968.
Well, yeah, that's right.
I feel enriched.
You're not responsible for what they did.
Another great example of her hypocrisy is when Tim Scott spoke on The View around a year ago. He told her that she demands people to be respectful, but she hardly ever offers that in return.
The American community, for the first time in the history of the country, is under 5%.
40% homelessness.
And 50%
of African Americans
50% of the folks in our community
get 13% of the population.
You had the chance to ask the question. I know that I've watched you on the show that you like people to be deferential and respectful, so I'm going to do the same thing.
That is true.
And for us to
so
suggest...
America has met its promise.
When you look at the income success that we've had...
That's an HBCU stat.
Well, listen, HBCU stat is a good one. To succeed is possible. It's one of the reasons why...
I need an opportunity to succeed because I have to go to... They're begging.
We have more time, though.
They're begging.
Sure, that's immaturity, but it's hypocritical at its core. But this example sounds like peanuts when compared to the time she revealed on live TV on The View that her husband had been implicated in health insurance fraud. Then she went on to precisely outline what he did.
Doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
Allegedly, he would perform surgery for which a patient was not insured, then would sue the insurance company to get paid for it. But this wasn't even the fraud he was being investigated for at first. Her on-air admission may have led to the RICO charges that followed.
In the criminal case, now the prosecutors are like, oh, really? Well, how about we add some additional fraud charges onto you? And they're talking about threatening him with insurance fraud, which I would say you could get about 20 years in prison. So that's a death sentence for him.
What Sunny Hostin does so well is act like a defense lawyer, manipulating truth, twisting it so hard that when it lands on her shoulders, she throws a tantrum and cries racism, sexism, or as in this situation, claims that the healthcare industry in the US is terrible, even though it's the best in the world. She cannot ever admit to being wrong. She's the worst kind of hypocrite. She's the arrogant hypocrite, and her arrogance may be the biggest of the 3 reasons why people hate her so much. We could highlight Sunny Hostin's arrogance for years and never run short of examples, but for the sake of this documentary, we'll keep it short. Look at this clip from The View when talking about charges being brought against Donald Trump in New York.
2 things can be true at once. Yesterday was a bad day for Donald Trump, the first indicted former president. I want to see this guy held accountable. This case is not taking Donald Trump down, and I say that for a couple of reasons.
How do you know that?
There was, well, just real quick, there was no conspiracy charge, which a lot of folks were looking to see if there was.
That was a harder charge to prove.
The felony charges, the max sentence is 4 years, but this is a first-time offender. It's a non-violent crime. It's a Class C felony. Every legal expert I've talked to has said most likely a fine and probation if he's even convicted.
I'll tell you why you're wrong as this legal expert. That is wrong. And I will
He's
tell
not
you,
going to jail over
I will
this.
tell you,
He's not going to jail
I will
over
tell
this.
you why you're wrong. Prosecutors are not only in the business of prosecuting crimes, we're in the business of sending out a message.
Alyssa Farah Griffin talked about this entire case. Even if he were to be found guilty, would result in misdemeanor charges and not any prison time. Sunny arrogantly snubs Alyssa and claims she's the legal expert and that yes, Donald Trump will go to prison. Well, did he? No. Then what did Sunny Hostin have to say about that? In her disposition, Sunny would constantly berate people and talk down to them as though they're children who couldn't possibly know anything.
Something that I'm still struggling with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is how did a convicted felon resonate more with Americans than a hyper-qualified woman of color? Do you think that racism and misogyny played any part in this election?
Following Donald Trump's landslide victory in 2024, she talks about 52% of women who voted for him and called them uneducated.
Black women tried to save this country again last night. 92% of black women voted for the vice president. You have Latinas in the 70 percentile voting for the vice president. What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding.
Just because a person may not have finished college doesn't make them uneducated. As many of us are beginning to finally realize, you can be highly educated without any formal post-high school schooling. But for someone like Sunny Hostin, she can't stomach that idea, and she arrogantly clings to the concept that a degree equals intelligence. Another great example of this is when racial advocate Coleman Hughes was interviewed on The View.
If I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No.
No, you did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
I said I was a conservative.
Yes, you did. So, but my question to you is, how do you respond?
That's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence that I've been co-opted.
I want to give you...
Sunny Hostin claimed he called himself a conservative, even though he clearly never did. She also argued with him about something Dr. King wrote shortly before his assassination about reparations.
He also said in 1968, it was about less than a week before he was assassinated, this country never stops to realize that they owe a people kept in slavery for 244 years. So rather than class, he did write about that earlier on, right before his death, he made the argument for racial equality and racial reparations.
The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro, that's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was, and it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based policy.
But he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Yeah.
Mr. Hughes tried to correct her, but she held firm. He responded by telling the audience to read the book themselves. Even he knew no one can argue with Sunny because she thinks she's right, even when she's wrong. When guests have to tell the audience directly to do their own research, it shows that a growing number of people are growing tired of her arrogance and condescending attitude towards everyone. In Sunny Hostin's worldview, she's allowed an opinion on anything and everything. Her opinions are always right, and whoever she doesn't like shouldn't be allowed to speak. It is the epitome of arrogance and stupidity. But perhaps there's a bigger problem than just Sunny Hostin in this whole picture. As for The View, you will never tire of finding an army of loyalists who love the program and, if needed, sell everything they own to keep these women on the air. However, under Barbara Walters' guidance, they tried to be as objective and honest as possible.
It used to be, and I still feel it is, that we do not, if you're in the news business, you do not give your personal opinions about major issues. I don't, even when I'm on The View. Nobody knows how I feel about the right to life or how I feel about a presidential candidate, etc., because I'm in the news business. The line between that seems to be blurred. I don't mind that a news person does a movie star and a cooking piece and interviews the Secretary of State, because that's what the morning shows have been doing for years. Although I was criticized for doing superstars at the same time that I was doing the news, the audience knows the difference. But I do think that we have to show some kind of objectivity, and I'm not sure that it's happening.
Today, they can't hide their divisiveness and even their underhanded tactics they use with certain guests. Take the rapper Killer Mike as an example. He was invited on The View and spoke about his Grammy wins. And instead of that, Sunny focused on his arrest backstage at the Grammy Awards.
There was an incident at the Grammys. Mm-hmm. It led to you being taken out in handcuffs and arrested. That was wrong. Obviously, it's an ongoing legal matter, so I don't know how much you can say about it.
Well, as a prosecutor, you know I can't say it.
You can't say much. But can you just give us some sort of description, because people are saying they're talking too much.
I think the backstage was overcrowded. I think the winners were exuberant. And I think security got a little overzealous, and that's all. It's water under the bridge for me.
She kept trying to turn the conversation onto it being about race, but Mike was having nothing to do with it. Then, when he talked about working with Georgia's Republican Governor Kemp and the good he has done for the black community, she scolded him. Listen to his response.
You lost me a little bit with your support of Kemp, but let me tell you this.
Not support of Kemp.
Some of his policies.
I mean, that's some misinformation. You cannot like me, but don't lie on me. I saw someone I really respect, a black woman who's a commentator.
So you don't support him, you like his policies.
Well, I support
some specific ones he named.
Beyond that, he's the governor of my state, so I have to be involved with him because I can't divorce myself. But let me say this. If you criticize someone, don't lie. But if someone is in the king's seat, I'm not going to not have dinner with the king on behalf of my people. I have to do that.
Sunny Hostin will simply not acknowledge when she's wrong. In her view, she's never wrong. The world is wrong. Even her co-hosts, as arrogant as they are as well, struggle daily to keep Sunny from showing off her arrogant lack of actual useful knowledge. Like the time she tried to claim solar eclipses, cicadas, and earthquakes were the product of climate change.
We've got a solar eclipse, we've got the earthquake, she ran down the hallway. Also, I learned that the cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
Cicadas,
Although I love
for the first time in like
No.
100 years.
No.
Two different, well, this is what I read. Two different times.
Two different kinds of cicadas.
Yes, two different times are coming.
The good cicadas and the bad cicadas.
But for the first time in many, many years.
No, every 17 years this happens.
Well, that's not what I read, but maybe, maybe you know better. But
in
I
a
will
way.
say all those things together
would maybe lead one to believe that, either climate change exists,
That's
or something is really going on.
returning. Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground. It can't. I don't think
It happens, and the eclipse. They've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen.
The View doesn't care about any other view, but the narrow, arrogant, misguided one in which they live. Sure, there are plenty of news anchors and networks, media personalities and politicians who are no different. But when it comes to hubris, few can stand on the same pedestal as Sunny Hostin and The View. She and her fellow hosts lie repeatedly. When they invite opposing voices onto the program like Tim Scott, they talk over them and simply argue with them. They don't listen. Speaking into an echo chamber is bad enough. Your ears start to become dull. Shrieking into that same chamber leads to deafness. Unfortunately, The View has become a deaf and dumb nightmare that remains on TV. But the question is, for how much longer? As much as Sunny wants to believe everyone loves her, the truth is found in the comments of The View's very own channel. She's losing support, she's losing faith from loyal viewers, and with the new charges brought against her husband, she's losing credibility in the public arena. Emperor Nero lost the faith of the Roman Empire. His arrogance and hubris brought his downfall. It has happened repeatedly throughout history, and while Asuncion Hostin is no empress, she carries herself like one, and it's time for her reign to end. And if we're lucky, the fall of The View as a whole, because her co-hosts such as Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar can arguably be more unbearable.